"Mommy, why did you leave?" said the abandoned girl. But a millionaire saw her, and then something terrible happened. Watch until the end. Comment with what you thought of this story, giving it a score from 0 to 10. I really want to know if you liked it. And please subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your support means the world. The scream that cut through the stuffy 3 o'clock air in Ashworth, Vermont, made Daniel Valmont drop his coffee cup onto the marble floor of his apartment. At 52, the businessman had built an empire with Valmont Construction, but at that moment he felt utterly helpless against the sound coming from the yellow colonial house across from his modern building. It was always at the same time, always with the same desperate intensity. For 3 weeks, that echo of suffering had been disrupting his work afternoons. Lily Sawyer, only 4 years old, huddled in the corner of the kitchen in the house where she lived with her Aunt Brenda. The 38-year-old woman held a metal spoon she had heated on the wood-burning stove, her eyes red from the cheap whiskey she'd been drinking since noon at Tony's bar. The little girl trembled, her thin arms already marked with scars that told a silent story of pain. "You're a curse on this house," Brenda muttered, her voice slurred by the alcohol. "Because of you, my sister is gone. Because of you, I lost everything." The spoon came down hard on Lily's small arm, and she bit her lip to keep from screaming louder. She had learned that screams only enraged her aunt further, who had worked for the town council until she was fired for constant absences. Across the street, Daniel approached the window for the first time in weeks. His life had become a mechanical routine since he lost Marianne 5 years ago on a rainy night he preferred not to remember. His work at the construction company was his only escape, but those screams were breaking through his wall of indifference. When the silence returned, he heard something different, a faint but familiar melody. A child was humming a tune that Marianne used to sing while cooking. The song was about free birds, and it came from the ajar back window of the colonial house. For the first time in years, Daniel felt something more than simple annoyance. In the house next to the colonial, Margaret Sawyer was watering her begonias when she heard the child singing. The 61-year-old retired elementary school teacher had developed a sixth sense for children in distress over her 40 years in education. That voice carried a pain that made her heart ache. She had known the Sawyer family for decades, but since Brenda had taken custody of her orphan niece, something had changed in the air of that house. Lily ran to her room at the back of the house, a stuffy space with an old bed and a crucifix on the wall. There, she wrapped herself in the thin sheet and began to hum the song her mother Joanna used to sing before bed. It was all she had left of her now, fragments of memories and a melody that comforted her in the most painful moments. Daniel stopped reviewing contracts when the music reached his ears. He knew that song. Marianne had sung it often, but there was something more. A distant memory began to form in his mind. Joanna, his former employee, also used to hum that song while organizing files at the construction company. Joanna, who had abruptly resigned 5 years ago, just a few months before Marianne's accident. The woman was kind, always punctual, always smiling while she worked. Then suddenly she had simply disappeared from his life, leaving only a formal resignation letter. He had never thought of her again, until he heard that familiar tune echoing from a house where a child seemed to be suffering. Margaret dried her hands on her apron and made a decision. The next morning, she would pay her neighbor a visit. It had been a long time since she had a proper conversation with Brenda, and perhaps it was time to get to know little Lily better. Something about that child's voice deeply troubled her. Meanwhile, Daniel remained at the window, an uncomfortable feeling growing in his chest. The music had stopped, but those few minutes had awakened memories he preferred to keep dormant. Memories of an employee who had mysteriously disappeared, of a wife who was gone forever, and now of a child who sang the same melancholy tune. The sun began to set over the mountains surrounding Ashworth as Lily finally fell asleep, exhausted by pain and fear. In her dreams, she flew like the birds she secretly drew on the kitchen walls with pieces of charcoal found in the yard. Across the street, Daniel closed his curtains and tried to get back to work, but he couldn't concentrate. Something had changed that afternoon, something he didn't fully understand yet. For the first time in years, he felt that maybe it was time to pay attention to what was happening beyond his own windows. Night fell on the historic town, but the echo of that children's song continued to resonate in the mind of a man who had spent 5 years running from his responsibilities and a retired teacher who could never ignore a child suffering. The fate of everyone was about to intertwine in an unexpected way. The next morning brought with it the aroma of fresh bread from the local bakeries and the typical bustle of Ashworth waking up to another day. Margaret put on her best floral dress and combed her grey hair with extra care. There was something in that child's voice that wouldn't leave her in peace, an echo of hopelessness she recognized from her years as an educator. At 9 o'clock sharp, she knocked on the door of the colonial house. The sound echoed through the silent interior until shuffling footsteps approached. Brenda opened the door, her face swollen and her eyes red, clearly suffering from the effects of the previous night's drinking. "Good morning, Brenda," Margaret said with her kindest smile. "I came to pay a friendly visit. It's been so long since we had a proper chat." Brenda hesitated, running a hand through her disheveled hair. "Oh, Mrs. Margaret, it's not a good time. The house is a mess." "Nonsense, dear. We've been neighbors for so long." Margaret took a step forward, forcing Brenda to back away. "And I'd love to meet your niece. I've heard she's a lovely little girl." Brenda's face hardened for an instant before she forced a weak smile. "Lily is? She's sick, high fever. Better not get too close." At that moment, a soft noise came from the kitchen, the sound of something being dragged across the floor. Margaret's ears perked up, immediately recognizing the sound of a child trying to move quietly. "Maybe I can help," the teacher insisted. "I have experience with sick children. I raised 3 of my own. You know how it is." "No need, really," Brenda replied quickly, blocking the entrance with her body. "I already took her to the doctor. It's just the flu. It'll pass soon." Margaret noticed Brenda's nervous hands, the way she avoided eye contact, and especially the strong smell of alcohol emanating from her even so early in the morning. All the signs she had learned to recognize over decades of dealing with troubled families. Across the street, Daniel watched the scene from his window while having breakfast. He had woken up earlier than usual, disturbed by confusing dreams, where a child's voice mixed with memories of Joanna. When he saw Margaret at the door of the colonial house, a strange curiosity washed over him. The teacher finally said goodbye to Brenda, but not before casting an investigative glance into the house. Something was deeply wrong there, and her experience told her a child was suffering. Inside the colonial house, Brenda locked the door firmly and went to the kitchen, where she found Lily crouched behind the table, trying to hide. The girl had tried to reach a glass of water from the sink, but she wasn't tall enough, and she had knocked over a chair in the process. "Didn't I tell you to stay in your room?" Brenda snarled, her irritation intensified by her hangover and the unexpected visit. "I was thirsty, Auntie," Lily murmured, her large eyes fixed on the floor. "Thirsty?" Brenda laughed bitterly. "You want water? Then go get it from the yard. And since you love making noise so much, you can stay out there until I decide you can come in." Lily went out to the small backyard, a space enclosed by high walls and dominated by a single mango tree. There, she sat on the dirt and began to draw with a piece of charcoal she had found near the wood-burning stove. It was always birds, small, large, some flying, others perched on imaginary branches. Each stroke represented her dream of freedom, The hours passed slowly. Brenda had locked the back door, leaving Lily in the yard under the strong midday Vermont sun. The girl began to feel dizzy, but she knew that knocking on the door would only result in more punishment. So she began to softly sing her mother's song, the melody her only source of comfort. It was this melody that reached Daniel's ears again. This time he couldn't ignore it. There was something too familiar in that voice, in that specific song. He picked up his phone and, almost without thinking, began to record. He didn't know exactly why, but an instinct told him he might need that evidence. As he recorded, fragments of memories began to fit together in his mind. Joanna humming that same song while she worked. Joanna, who had been an exemplary employee until she abruptly disappeared. Joanna, who always spoke fondly of her little daughter, a girl named Lily, Daniel murmured, the phone trembling in his hands. Joanna's daughter was named Lily. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. The child suffering in the house across the street was the daughter of his former employee, the kind woman who had worked for him for 3 years before simply vanishing. How had he not made this connection before? Daniel put his phone down and began to pace his apartment. He vaguely remembered Joanna mentioning family problems, a sister she didn't get along with, financial difficulties. But he had been so absorbed in his own problems at the time that he hadn't paid proper attention. Now, 5 years later, Joanna's daughter was across the street, and from the sounds coming from that house, she was not in a good situation. The guilt Daniel carried over his wife's loss multiplied, now including regret for not having helped Joanna when she clearly needed it. At 3 in the afternoon, right on schedule, the screams started again. This time, Daniel did not turn away from the window. He watched in growing horror as, through the kitchen window of the colonial house, he saw a female silhouette moving aggressively. He picked up his phone again and began to record, this time with more determination. What he saw through the phone's screen made him nauseous. Brenda was holding something in her hands and gesturing violently toward a small figure he could barely make out. Lily's screams echoed through the afternoon, and this time Daniel couldn't pretend they were just childish tantrums. When silence returned, he remained at the window for a few more minutes, his heart pounding in his chest. He had just witnessed something that would change everything. The question now was, what would he do with this information? That night, Lily slept on the ground in the backyard, where Brenda had left her as punishment. The girl curled up in her own t-shirt and looked at the stars through the branches of the mango tree. In her 4-year-old mind, she made a silent plea to her mother, for someone, anyone, to take her away from that place of pain. Across the street, Daniel couldn't sleep, tormented by the certainty that he needed to act, but paralyzed by the same emotional inertia that had consumed him since Marianne's departure. The discovery about Lily had reopened wounds he thought were healed, forcing him to confront his own cowardice and negligence. 3 days passed since Daniel discovered the child's identity, and guilt consumed him like a slow fire. During these days, he had systematically documented the episodes of violence, always at 3 in the afternoon, always with the same methodical brutality. His collection of videos and audio recordings grew, but his courage to act remained paralyzed by the same cowardice that had haunted him since the night he lost Marianne. On that Thursday morning, Margaret made a decision that would change the course of everything. She had been awake all night, tormented by the certainty that a child was suffering just a few yards from her home. Her 4 decades as an educator had taught her to recognize the signs, and they were all present in the Sawyers' colonial house. She decided to approach the situation differently. Instead of attempting another direct visit to Brenda, she opted for a more subtle strategy. At 7 in the morning, she positioned herself in her side yard, the spot from which she had the best view of the colonial house's backyard. What she saw horrified her. Lily was sitting under the mango tree, completely alone, wearing only a torn t-shirt and panties. Her small arms were marked with obvious burns, some still red and inflamed. The girl was drawing in the dirt with a piece of charcoal, creating shapes Margaret recognized as birds. "My God," the teacher whispered, her hands trembling as she held the fence separating the yards. It was worse than she had imagined, much worse. Lily looked up and saw the old woman watching her. For a moment, the two stared at each other in silence. Then, to Margaret's surprise, the girl smiled, a weak but genuine smile, and waved timidly. "Hi, Grandma," Lily said in her tiny voice, using the affectionate term she gave to all older women. "Hi, my dear," Margaret replied, struggling to keep her voice steady. "Are you okay?" Lily glanced quickly at the house windows before answering. "I am. I'm just drawing birdies." "How lovely. Do you like birds?" "I love them. They can fly wherever they want," the girl answered, her large eyes shining with a sadness that broke Margaret's heart. At that moment, Brenda's harsh voice echoed from inside the house. "Lily, where are you, girl?" The terror that instantly washed over the child's face said everything Margaret needed to know. Lily stood up quickly, wiped her hands on her t-shirt and ran inside the house, but not before looking back at Margaret one last time with an expression that screamed for help. Margaret remained in the yard for a few more minutes, processing what she had seen, the burns, the fear, the way the child reacted to her aunt's voice. It all confirmed her worst fears. She could no longer pretend she didn't know what was happening. Meanwhile, across the street, Daniel had witnessed the entire interaction. From his window, he could partially see the Sawyers' yard, and the sight of the marks on Lily's arms made him sick. For the first time in 5 years, he felt a genuine fury burning in his chest. Joanna had trusted him in some way, even if indirectly. Even if he didn't know it at the time, she had left her daughter in the care of a family living in the same town where he lived. And now that child was being tortured while he watched from his comfortable window, paralyzed by his own cowardice. At 11 in the morning, Margaret made a brave decision. She put on her best clothes, took a tray of homemade sweets she had prepared as a pretext, and headed again to the colonial house. This time, she would not take no for an answer. Brenda answered the door reluctantly, clearly annoyed by her neighbor's persistence. "Mrs. Margaret, I already told you it's not a good time." "Brenda, dear, I brought some sweets I made yesterday," Margaret interrupted firmly, "and I insist on getting to know little Lily better. As old neighbors, it's our duty to support each other." Before Brenda could protest, Margaret had already entered the house, using all the authority that decades in the classroom had given her. The interior of the colonial house was dark and smelled of mildew mixed with alcohol. Old, poorly maintained furniture occupied the living room, and there was a heavy atmosphere that made the air feel hard to breathe. "Lily is sleeping," Brenda lied, blocking the way to the back of the house. "What a shame. Maybe another time then," Margaret said, but her experienced eyes had already catalogued several disturbing details. Dark stains on the kitchen floor that seemed to have been poorly cleaned, a metal spoon left on the stove, and especially small charcoal drawings on the walls that had clearly been made by a child. At that moment, a low sound came from the direction of the kitchen, a muffled sob, almost imperceptible. Margaret and Brenda froze. The silence that followed was tense and revealing. "Must be the neighbor's cat," Brenda said quickly, but her voice trembled slightly. Margaret smiled and nodded, but she had decided. She had seen enough. "Well, I'll let you rest then. But Brenda, remember I'm always right next door if you need anything. Anything at all." Margaret's tone made it clear it wasn't just a casual offer of help. It was a subtle but direct warning. After the teacher left, Brenda locked the door forcefully and went to the kitchen, where she found Lily huddled behind the wood-burning stove, trying to hide. The girl had cried upon hearing Margaret's kind voice, remembering the kindness she had once known. "You were making noise!" Brenda accused, her eyes already shining with familiar fury. "No, Auntie, I didn't make noise," Lily protested, but her small voice sounded weak even to her. Brenda picked up the metal spoon from the stove and placed it directly in the flame. Lily recognized the ritual and began to tremble. She knew what was coming next. "You want attention, don't you?" Brenda hissed as the spoon heated up. "You want the neighbors coming here asking questions? You think I don't know how to take care of you?" Across the street, Daniel had positioned his phone at the window and was recording again. This time, he managed to capture not only the sounds, but also partial images through the kitchen window. What he saw made him make a decision that would change everything. He could no longer be just a silent observer. Joanna had been a good person, a dedicated employee who always spoke of her daughter with love. This child was his responsibility now, whether he liked it or not. While Lily suffered another episode of systematic torture, Daniel made a call he hadn't made in months. He called Dr. Robert Miller, his personal lawyer and old college friend. "Robert, I need your help with a delicate situation," he said, watching through the window as Lily's screams echoed through the afternoon. "It's about a child, and I think it might be a matter of life or death." That night, after Brenda fell asleep drunk on the living room sofa, Lily managed to slip silently into the backyard. Her new burns stung, but the physical pain was less than the ache in her heart. She sat under the mango tree and looked at the stars, softly humming her mother's song. What she didn't know was that, for the first time in months, someone was truly paying attention to her suffering, and that, in the coming days, her life would change in ways she couldn't even imagine. Dr. Robert Miller arrived at Daniel's apartment on Friday morning with a grave expression. The two men had been classmates nearly 3 decades ago, and Robert knew well the emotional isolation his friend had built after losing his wife. That's why the urgent call from the previous night had surprised him so much. "Daniel, I need you to tell me exactly what's happening," Robert said, sitting in the spacious living room. "You mentioned a child in danger, but I need details." Daniel served coffee and positioned himself near the window, the place that had become his obsession in recent days. "The girl living in the house across the street is the daughter of a former employee of mine, Joanna Sawyer. She's being mistreated by the aunt who's caring for her." "Mistreated how?" Robert asked, taking a notepad from his briefcase. "Burns, daily screams, neglect." Daniel paused, struggling with the words. "I have recordings, Robert, evidence of what's happening." Robert was silent for a moment, processing the information. "Daniel, this is very serious. If you have evidence of child abuse, you need to contact Child Protective Services immediately." "I know," Daniel replied, running his hands over his face. "But there's something else. Joanna worked for me for 3 years. She left abruptly in 2019, just a few months before Marianne's accident. I never understood why, but now you feel responsible," Robert completed, understanding the emotional complexity of the situation. Daniel nodded. "If I had paid more attention back then, maybe I could have helped. Maybe Joanna wouldn't have had to leave her daughter with this woman." At that moment, the familiar sound of screams echoed from the house across the street, even though it was only 9 in the morning. Both men turned to the window, and Robert could see the anguish on his friend's face. "Does this happen every day?" he asked, horrified. "At 3 in the afternoon like clockwork, but sometimes at other times too." Daniel replied, picking up his phone. "Want to see the recordings?" Robert watched the videos in growing silence, his face paling with each scene. As a family law attorney, he had seen many cases of child abuse, but something about the systematization of that violence deeply disturbed him. "Daniel, we can't wait any longer. I need you to give me all these recordings today. I'm going to contact Child Protective Services and the District Attorney's Office." This child needs to be removed from that house immediately. While the two men planned the intervention, across the street, Lily was living another day of terror. Brenda had woken up with a particularly severe hangover and discovered there was no more alcohol in the house. Her irritation multiplied when she found new bird drawings that Lily had made on the kitchen wall during the night. "How many times do I have to tell you not to dirty the walls?" Brenda shouted, grabbing Lily's arm with enough force to leave marks. "You're a pest, a curse on this house." Lily tried to explain, to say she had dreamed of her mother and that the drawings made her feel less alone, but the words were lost in sobs. At 4 years old, she still didn't fully understand why her aunt hated her so much, why each day brought new pain. "You're going to stay locked in your room until I decide what to do with you," Brenda continued, pushing the girl down the hallway. "And if I hear a single sound, you'll experience a punishment you've never known before." The room where Lily was locked was small and stuffy, with only a high window she couldn't reach. There, she curled up in the corner and began to softly sing her mother's song, the melody her only source of comfort in a world that seemed to have forgotten she existed. It was this song that Margaret heard as she passed the Sawyer house on her way to the market. The retired teacher had spent the whole night thinking about her conversation with Lily in the yard. The marks she had seen on the child's arms, the atmosphere of fear that permeated that house. Margaret stopped in front of the gate and listened. Lily's voice was weak, but filled with a sadness that broke the teacher's heart. At that moment, she made a decision that would change everything. Instead of going to the market, Margaret headed directly to the center of Ashworth, where the small Child Protective Services office was located. She knew the social worker, Anna Hayes, well, a former student of hers who had dedicated herself to protecting vulnerable children. "Anna, I need to talk to you about a very serious situation," Margaret said, entering the office without ceremony. Anna Hayes looked up from the papers she was reviewing. "Mrs. Margaret, it's good to see you. What brings you here today?" "A child in danger, my neighbor. I'm sure she's being mistreated." Anna sat up straight in her chair, her expression immediately serious. During her 5 years as a social worker, she had learned to recognize when a report was serious, and Margaret Sawyer was not the type of person to make frivolous accusations. "Tell me everything," Anna said, grabbing a report form. While Margaret recounted her observations on the other side of town, Robert Miller was in a similar meeting at the district attorney's office. Prosecutor Lucas Anderson listened intently as Robert presented the evidence collected by Daniel. "This is compelling evidence," the prosecutor said, examining the videos on Robert's phone. "I'm ordering an immediate investigation and requesting the child's removal from the family environment." "How long will that take?" Robert asked, concerned. "With this evidence, we can act today," Lucas replied. "I'm contacting Child Protective Services now." And so, by a coincidence that would change Lily's destiny, 2 simultaneous reports reached Child Protective Services on the same morning. Anna Hayes was just finishing noting Margaret's account when her phone rang. Child Protective Services, Anna Hayes speaking. "Anna, this is Prosecutor Lucas Anderson. I need you to conduct an urgent intervention at a house on Stone Street. We have evidence of severe child abuse." Anna paused, her pen suspended over the paper. "Is it by any chance number 127, the yellow colonial house?" "Exactly. How did you know?" "I just received a report about the same house," Anna replied, looking at Margaret with surprise. 2 independent sources. This confirms the severity of the situation. By 2 in the afternoon, a coordinated operation was being assembled. Anna Hayes, accompanied by 2 social workers and a court officer, was heading to Stone Street. Margaret had offered to accompany the team, using her experience with traumatized children. Daniel watched everything from his window, his heart pounding in his chest. Finally, after days of paralysis, he had managed to act. Robert was by his side, both witnessing the moment that would change Lily's life forever. "You did the right thing," Robert said, placing a hand on his friend's shoulder. "I hope it's not too late," Daniel replied, his eyes fixed on the team approaching the colonial house. At the Sawyer house, Brenda had gone out to buy alcohol at Tony's bar, leaving Lily locked in the stuffy room. The girl continued to sing softly, unaware that her life was about to change radically. When Anna Hayes knocked on the door of the colonial house and got no answer, she used her legal authority to enter the property. What they found inside surpassed even their worst expectations. A dirty and neglected house, a strong smell of alcohol, and clear signs of neglect in every room. It was Margaret who first heard the faint voice coming from the back room. "Someone's in here," she said, guiding the team down the hallway. When they opened the bedroom door and found Lily huddled in the corner, singing her sad song, everyone present felt a pang in their heart. The girl looked up with large, frightened eyes, not understanding who these people were or what they wanted from her. "Hi, my dear," Anna Hayes said, crouching down to be at the child's level. "My name is Anna. We've come to help you." Lily looked at Margaret, recognizing the kind lady she had spoken to in the yard. A flicker of hope shone in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by fear. "Auntie Brenda will be mad," she whispered. "You don't have to worry about that now," Margaret said, extending a hand to the girl. "We're going to get out of here, okay?" And so, after 8 months of silent suffering, Lily was finally removed from the house where she had known only pain and fear, beginning a journey that would lead her back to the light she had lost when her parents left this world. Lily's departure from the colonial house was a moment that would be etched in the memory of everyone present. The little girl held Margaret's hand tightly, her small, hesitant steps crossing the threshold that had been her prison for so many months. Her large eyes scanned the streets of Ashworth as if seeing the world for the first time. "Where are we going, Grandma?" Lily asked, once again using the affectionate term she had given Margaret. "To a safe place, my dear," the teacher replied, gently squeezing the girl's small hand. "A place where no one will ever hurt you again." Anna Hayes coordinated the operation efficiently, but her heart broke as she observed Lily's physical and emotional state. The child was visibly malnourished, her clothes were inadequate and dirty, and the burn marks on her arms told a story of systematic suffering that no child should ever know. Across the street, Daniel watched the scene from his window, a mixture of relief and anxiety consuming his chest. Finally, after days of torturous inaction, he had managed to do something concrete. But now a new worry haunted him. What would happen to Lily from here? Robert, who remained by his side, noticed his friend's tension. "The important thing is that she's safe now," he said. "We'll figure out the rest, step by step." "But where will they take her?" Daniel asked, watching the group walk away down the stone street. "Probably to a temporary shelter while they look for a foster family or relatives who can care for her properly," Robert explained. Daniel felt a knot in his stomach. The idea of Lily, the daughter of Joanna, the kind woman who had worked for him, being sent to a shelter deeply disturbed him. There was something wrong with that, something his heart completely rejected. In the car on the way to the municipal shelter, Lily remained silent, observing the landscape through the window. Margaret had insisted on accompanying the transfer, arguing that the child needed a familiar presence during the transition. "Lily," Anna Hayes said softly, "can you tell me a little about your mommy? What was she like?" The girl turned to the social worker, her eyes filling with tears. "Mommy used to sing to me before I went to sleep. She smelled like flowers and would hug me when I had nightmares. And do you remember anything else about her?" She worked in a big house and always brought me little treats hidden in her purse," Lily murmured. She said that one day we would live in a pretty house too, just the two of us. Margaret exchanged a meaningful look with Anna Hayes. There was more to Joanna's story than they had initially imagined. The St. Francis Shelter was a simple but well-kept building on the outskirts of Ashworth. When they arrived, they were greeted by Sister Constance, a 50-year-old nun who ran the place with a firm hand but a kind heart. Another child in a vulnerable situation, the sister sighed, observing Lily with experienced eyes. "How old is she?" 4 years old, Anna Hayes replied, "and she comes from a particularly severe situation of physical abuse and neglect." Sister Constance knelt to Lily's level, studying the marks on her arms with a dismayed expression. "My child, you are safe now. No one will hurt you here." Lily hid behind Margaret's skirt, clearly frightened by the unfamiliar environment. "Can I stay with Grandma?" she asked in a tiny voice. "My dear, I would love that, but I can't take you home with me right now," Margaret explained, her heart breaking at the disappointment in the girl's eyes. "But I will come visit you every day, I promise." Meanwhile, back on Stone Street, Brenda arrived home drunk and discovered Lily's absence. Initially, she thought the girl was hiding, but when she realized the bedroom door was open and there was no sign of the child anywhere, an alcoholic rage took over her. "Lily, where are you?" She shouted through the empty rooms, not understanding what had happened. It was then that she found an official notice left under the door by the social workers, informing her of the minor's removal and requesting her presence at the Child Protective Services office the next day for questioning. Brenda crumpled the paper in anger, but a part of her, a small, almost forgotten part, felt relief. For months, she had carried the weight of caring for a child who constantly reminded her of her deceased sister, a responsibility her addiction had made impossible to bear. At the shelter, Lily was settled into a small room she shared with 2 other girls. Clara, 6, and Isabel, 5, were tasked by Sister Constance with helping the newcomer adjust. "You draw very well," Clara said, watching Lily sketch birds on a piece of paper they had given her. "I like to draw too, but I only know how to make flowers." "My mommy said that birds carry messages to heaven," Lily explained shyly. "I draw them so she knows I'm okay." Isabel, who had arrived at the shelter after losing her parents in a car accident, immediately understood Lily's sentiment. "I talk to my parents too, every night before I go to sleep." For the first time in months, Lily felt understood by children who shared similar experiences of loss and abandonment. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. The image of Lily being taken to the shelter tormented him. He got up several times, pacing the living room and always returning to the window that looked out onto the now empty colonial house. Robert had made it clear that the legal process would be complex. Brenda would permanently lose custody, but finding a suitable family for Lily could take months, perhaps years. The girl would grow up in a shelter without the family love a 4-year-old so desperately needed. It was then that an idea began to form in his mind, an idea he initially dismissed as absurd, but which returned with increasing insistence. He had financial resources, a large house, and most importantly, a moral debt to Joanna that he had never properly acknowledged. The next morning, Daniel made an unexpected call to Robert. "I want to know about the custody process," he said bluntly. "Daniel, I don't understand. Custody of whom?" "Of Lily. I want to adopt her." The silence on the other end of the line was long and heavy. "Daniel, are you sure about what you're saying? Adoption is an irreversible process, especially for a single man of your age." "I've never been more certain of anything in my life," Daniel replied, surprised by the firmness of his own voice. "Joanna worked for me for 3 years. She was a good person, a good mother. If I hadn't been so selfish back then, maybe I could have helped when she needed it. This isn't about guilt, it's about what's best for the child," Robert warned. "Exactly. And a 4-year-old girl deserves a family, not a shelter. Daniel paused, looking out the window at the empty colonial house. I have the means to give her everything she needs: education, healthcare, love, and most importantly, I can honor her mother's memory. Robert sighed deeply. It's going to be a long and complicated process. You'll have to go through psychological evaluations, social services, a preparatory course for adoption. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. At the shelter, Lily woke up early and ran to the dormitory window. From there, she could see the mountains surrounding Ashworth, the same mountains she used to watch from the yard of Brenda's house. She began to hum her mother's song softly, unaware that at that very moment, on the other side of town, a man was making the most important decision of his life, a decision that would forever change both of their destinies. 2 weeks had passed since Lily arrived at the shelter, and the girl was beginning to show shy signs of recovery. The other children had welcomed her with genuine affection, and Sister Constance noticed small daily progress. Lily smiled more, ate with a better appetite, and even joined in the games in the courtyard. Margaret faithfully kept her promise of daily visits, bringing storybooks and helping Lily with basic literacy exercises. During one of these visits, the teacher made a surprising discovery. "Lily, can you read this word here?" Margaret asked, pointing to a sign on the shelter wall. To the astonishment of everyone present, Lily read without difficulty, "Kaf ita ia." The girl knew several words, far beyond what was expected for her age and situation. "Who taught you to read, dear?" Sister Constance inquired. Intrigued, "My mommy," Lily replied simply. She said letters were important for understanding the world. Anna Hayes, who witnessed the scene, mentally noted this new piece of information about Joanna. With each revelation, it became clear that Lily's mother was a more complex and educated woman than she initially appeared. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Daniel was facing his first evaluation in the adoption process. The psychologist, Dr. Evelyn Reed, received him in her office, a 45-year-old woman with experience in late adoption cases. "Mr. Valmont, I need to understand your motivations," she said, leafing through the initial documents. "Why would a successful 52-year-old businessman decide to adopt a traumatized child?" Daniel had prepared for this question, yet he hesitated before answering. "Joanna Sawyer, the girl's mother, worked for me for 3 years. She was an exceptional person, and I feel that I failed her when she needed help." "So this is about guilt?" "Initially, perhaps. But in recent days, watching Lily's suffering, I've realized I have a lot of love stored up to offer. I lost my wife 5 years ago and have lived in isolation ever since, focused only on work." Dr. Reed made careful notes. "A 4-year-old child who has suffered systematic abuse will need specialized care, therapy, extreme patience. Are you prepared for that?" "I'm willing to learn whatever is necessary," Daniel replied with conviction. "I have the resources to hire the best professionals. Available time? I can reduce my workload, and most importantly, I have the determination to give her the life her mother dreamed of." At the shelter, an unexpected situation was developing. Clara had told Lily about a local tradition. Every Friday, the children could make a special request to Sister Constance, and she would try to grant it within reason. "I wanted to see the house where my mommy worked," Lily said shyly when her turn came. Sister Constance was surprised by the request. "And do you know where this house is, my child?" "Mommy took me there once. It's a big house with a black gate and a pretty garden. It's near the church downtown." Anna Hayes, who had been called to evaluate the request, considered the possibility. It might be therapeutic for Lily to revisit positive memories of her mother, as long as it was done with proper supervision. The next afternoon, a small group headed to the historic center of Ashworth: Anna Hayes, Sister Constance, Margaret, and Lily. The girl walked among them, her large eyes observing every detail of the stone streets with a mixture of nostalgia and anxiety. "It's there," Lily exclaimed suddenly, pointing to a well-maintained colonial house painted light blue with white details. "That's where Mommy worked!" The group stopped in front of the gate, and Margaret immediately recognized the residents of the Albright family, local merchants known for their discretion and good treatment of employees. "Should we knock and explain the situation?" Anna Hayes suggested. Mrs. Eleanor Albright, a 60-year-old woman, answered the door with surprise. When Anna Hayes explained who Lily was, the woman's face transformed into a mixture of shock and emotion. "My goodness, Joanna's little girl," she exclaimed. "Please, come in, all of you." In the cozy living room, Mrs. Albright told a version of the story no one expected to hear. "Joanna worked here for 2 years. From 2017 to 2019, she was an exemplary employee, but also a dear friend. She constantly talked about Lily, showed pictures, told stories." "Why did she stop working here?" Anna Hayes asked. "She said she had found a better job at a construction company. We were happy for her, but we missed her terribly." Mrs. Albright looked at Lily with affection. "She always said she wanted to give her daughter a better life, that one day Lily would study at a private school and have opportunities she never had." Lily listened to everything in silence, absorbing information about her mother that helped complete the puzzle of her fragmented memories. "And do you know why Joanna went to live with her sister?" Sister Constance inquired. "Oh, yes. Joanna told me she was going through financial difficulties. Lily's father had disappeared shortly after the girl's birth, and she was raising her daughter alone. When Brenda offered help, Joanna thought it would be temporary, just until she stabilized in her new job. The pieces were starting to fit together. Joanna had left a stable job at the Albrights' house to work at Daniel's construction company, probably because the salary was better. But something had gone wrong, forcing her to accept her sister's help. "Mrs. Albright," Anna Hayes said carefully, "do you know of any of Joanna's relatives other than Brenda, someone who could take care of Lily?" The lady shook her head sadly. "Joanna told me several times that she only had Brenda as family. Her parents were already gone, and she didn't keep in touch with other relatives." On the way back to the shelter, Lily was quieter than usual. Finally, she tugged on Margaret's skirt and asked, "Grandma, why did my mommy never come back to get me from Auntie Brenda's house?" Margaret knelt to the girl's level, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes, dear, the people we love have to go to a place very far away and they can't come back. But that doesn't mean they stop loving us." "Is she in heaven with the birds?" "I believe so," Margaret replied, hugging the girl. That night, Daniel received an unexpected call from Robert. "I have news about the process," the lawyer said. "The social worker in charge of the case wants to interview you tomorrow, and there's something else. We found more details about Joanna Sawyer." "What kind of details?" "She did indeed work for you for 3 years, but we found no record of a formal resignation in the construction company's files. It's as if she simply disappeared from the system." Daniel frowned. "That's strange. All employees have entry and exit records." "Exactly, and there's another thing. Joanna died in a car accident in March 2020, just 6 months after leaving your job. Lily was orphaned at 3.5. The revelation hit Daniel like a punch to the gut. Joanna had died shortly after leaving the construction company, leaving her daughter completely vulnerable. If he had been more attentive at the time, he might have prevented Lily from suffering years of abuse. "Robert," he said in a choked voice, "I need to speed up this adoption process. I can't let this child spend another day without a family." "Daniel, I know you're anxious, but it's not anxiety, Robert. It's responsibility. Joanna trusted me when she came to work at the construction company, and I let her down. I won't let her daughter down, too." On the other side of town at the shelter, Lily lay in her bed, watching the stars through the dormitory window. Clara and Isabel were already asleep, but she couldn't fall asleep. She had dreamed of her mother the night before, a dream where Joanna told her that she would soon find a family that would love her as she deserved. Unknowingly, the girl was about to discover that sometimes dreams can be omens of a reality better than anything she had ever lived. The social worker, Carla Mendonça, arrived at Daniel's apartment on a cloudy October morning, carrying a bulky folder and an experienced gaze that seemed capable of seeing through people. At 38, she had handled dozens of adoption cases and knew how to distinguish genuine motivations from superficial ones. "Mr. Valmont, I need to understand your current routine," she said, making detailed notes about the environment. A single man who works 60 hours a week is not exactly the ideal profile to care for a traumatized child. Daniel had prepared for this criticism. "I've already spoken with my partners about redistributing responsibilities. I can reduce my workload to 30 hours a week, focusing only on strategic decisions." And the emotional support. Lily will need much more than financial stability. "I'm willing to do family therapy, hire a child psychologist, whatever is necessary." Daniel paused, looking out the window toward the empty colonial house. "Ms. Carla, can I tell you something that's not in the official papers?" The social worker raised her eyebrows, curious. "For 3 years, I watched Joanna handle the construction company's files with the same love she showed when talking about her daughter. She organized everything perfectly because she knew that every well-executed project meant a better future for Lily." Daniel stepped away from the window. "When she resigned, I should have asked why. I should have offered help. I didn't, and Lily paid the price for my indifference." Carla stopped writing and watched him intently. "You're saying you feel guilty?" "No, I'm saying I'm responsible. There's a difference." Meanwhile, at the shelter, a delicate situation was developing. Lily had started having recurring nightmares, waking up in the middle of the night, screaming for her mother. Sister Constance was worried, as the episodes were affecting not only Lily, but also the other children. "She needs more intensive psychological support," the sister told Anna Hayes during a morning meeting, "and perhaps it's time to expedite the process of placing her in a foster family." "There is a prospective parent in the process," Anna Hayes revealed, "Daniel Valmont, the businessman who made the initial report. He wants to adopt her." Sister Constance was surprised. "A single man? That's unusual." "Yes, and that's why the process is being even more rigorous, but his motivations seem genuine." That same day, Margaret arrived for her daily visit and found Lily more withdrawn than usual. The girl was sitting alone in the courtyard, drawing birds in the sand with a stick. "What happened, my dear?" the teacher asked, sitting beside her. "I dreamed that Mommy was looking for me, but she couldn't find me," Lily murmured. "She was calling my name, but I was trapped in a dark place." Margaret's heart ached. "Lily, would you like to know something about your mommy?" The girl looked up, interested. "Your mommy was very smart. She could read and write very well, and that's why she was able to teach you too. That means she wanted you to have a bright future." "But she's not here to teach me anymore," Lily said sadly. "No, but she left everything she knew stored right here." Margaret gently touched the girl's chest. "And one day, when you grow up, you'll use all of that to help other children, just like your mommy did with you." Across town, Daniel received a call that would change everything. It was Carla Mendonça, the social worker. "Mr. Valmont, I'd like to propose something unconventional," she said. "Before we make a final decision on the adoption, how about you meet Lily in person?" Daniel's heart raced. "Is that possible?" "With proper supervision, yes. We can arrange a meeting at the shelter, see how you interact. It will be good for both you and her." "When?" "Tomorrow morning, if you're available. That night, Daniel barely slept. He had mentally prepared for the bureaucratic process of adoption, but he hadn't considered the moment he would finally meet Joanna's daughter in person. How would she react to him? Would he be able to establish a connection with a child who had suffered so much? At the shelter, Sister Constance carefully prepared Lily for the meeting. "My child, tomorrow a very special person is coming to meet you, someone who knew your mommy and wants to take care of you." Lily was silent for a long moment. "Is it a daddy?" "It could be if you like each other, but you don't have to worry about that now. Just be yourself, okay?" The next morning, Daniel arrived at the shelter wearing a simple shirt and jeans, having rejected the suit he would normally wear. Carla Mendonça greeted him at the entrance, along with Anna Hayes. "Remember, Mr. Valmont, let the interaction happen naturally. Don't force anything," Carla advised. They walked to the inner courtyard, where Lily was sitting under a tree, drawing in a notebook Margaret had given her. When she saw the adults approaching, she looked up with curiosity. Daniel felt as if the world stopped when he saw Lily up close for the first time. She had the same large, expressive eyes as her mother, but there was a sadness in them that no 4-year-old should carry. "Lily," Anna Hayes said softly, "this is Mr. Valmont. He worked with your mommy a few years ago." The girl studied Daniel attentively, as if trying to find some connection to her memories of Joanna. "You knew my mommy?" she finally asked. Daniel knelt to her level, feeling a lump in his throat. "I did. She was a very special person. She always spoke of you with so much love. She talked about me." "She did. She said you were the most important thing in her life." Daniel noticed the notebook in Lily's hands. "May I see your drawings?" Lily hesitated for a moment, then handed him the notebook. Page after page showed birds of all kinds, some flying, some in nests, some alone, others in flocks. "They're very beautiful," Daniel said, genuinely impressed. "You really like birds, don't you?" "Mommy said they carry messages to heaven," Lily explained. "I draw them so she knows I'm okay." Daniel felt tears welling up in his eyes. The innocence and strength of that small child touched him deeply. "Lily, would you like to see where your mommy worked? The construction company has a big office with lots of windows where you can see the birds flying." To everyone's surprise, Lily smiled for the first time since arriving at the shelter. "Can I draw there?" "Of course you can. You can draw as many birds as you want." Anna Hayes and Carla exchanged significant glances. There was a natural connection between Daniel and Lily that went beyond words, a chemistry that couldn't be forged or forced. "Mr. Daniel," Lily said suddenly, "do you live alone?" The question caught Daniel by surprise. "I do. Why? Do you get sad alone?" "I used to get very sad alone in Auntie Brenda's room." Daniel felt as if the girl had seen directly into his soul. "I do get sad sometimes, yes. But I think if we had each other for company, maybe we wouldn't be sad anymore." Lily considered this response with the seriousness of someone much older. "Would you sing to me before I sleep? Mommy always sang. I would try to learn the songs your mommy sang. And would you let me draw on the walls?" Daniel laughed, the first genuine laugh he had let out in years. "We can set up a whole wall just for you to draw as many birds as you want." When the visit ended, Lily said goodbye to Daniel with a shy wave, but there was something different in her eyes, a glimmer of hope that wasn't there before. In the car on his way home, Daniel called Robert. "Speed up the process," he said without preamble. "How was the meeting?" "Robert, this girl needs a family, and I need her as much as she needs me." That night, both Daniel and Lily slept better than they had in weeks, both dreaming of a possibility that finally seemed real, the possibility of no longer being alone in the world. 6 months after Daniel and Lily's first meeting, both of their lives had transformed in ways neither could have imagined. The adoption process had been finalized 2 weeks earlier, and now Lily Sawyer Valmont walked through the house that had become her new home, exploring each room with the natural curiosity of a child who finally felt safe. Daniel's house had undergone a complete renovation. The formal office was transformed into a child's bedroom, painted light blue with white clouds on the ceiling. One of the walls was specially prepared for Lily's drawings, which now spread out in a colorful explosion of birds of all shapes and sizes. "Daddy Daniel, can I draw a hummingbird here?" Lily asked, pointing to an empty space on the wall. She had started calling him Daddy naturally, without any pressure, after 2 weeks of living together. "Of course, my daughter," Daniel replied, watching her work with concentration. In recent months, he had discovered a patience he didn't know he possessed, and a capacity for love he thought he had lost with Marianne. The adjustment hadn't been easy. Lily still had occasional nightmares, and Daniel had learned to recognize the signs of anxiety that preceded them. They attended family therapy twice a week with Dr. Reed, who helped them build a healthy relationship based on mutual trust. On that April morning, they were preparing for a special event. Margaret had organized a small party at the shelter to celebrate the success of Lily's adoption, and several important people in her journey would be present. "Are you nervous to see the girls from the shelter?" Daniel asked, as he helped Lily choose a dress. "A little," she admitted, "but I'm also happy. I want to show Clara and Isabel that I found a real family." When they arrived at the St. Francis shelter, they were greeted with a celebration. Clara and Isabel ran to hug Lily, eager to hear about her new life. Sister Constance watched with tears in her eyes, happy to see one of her children finally settled in a loving family. "How's it going, my child?" the sister asked, kneeling to talk to Lily. "It's different," Lily said thoughtfully. "Daddy Daniel makes breakfast with me every day, and at night he tries to sing Mommy's songs, even when he gets the words wrong." Daniel laughed, coming closer. "I'm getting better, aren't I, Lily?" "You are," she confirmed with a smile. "And he lets me help water the plants in the garden. We planted sunflowers because he said they always look towards the sun, just like the birds that fly high." Anna Hayes approached the group, carrying a folder with documents. "Mr. Valmont, I brought something that might interest you. We found some of Joanna's personal belongings that were stored in the construction company's office." Daniel was surprised. "In my office? What do you mean?" "Apparently, she left a small box in the administrative department's closet when she left. No one had touched it until the recent renovation." Anna Hayes handed over a simple but well-preserved shoebox. Daniel looked at Lily, who was watching everything with curiosity. "Want to open it with me?" he asked. Lily nodded, and together they opened the box. Inside were some photos of Lily as a baby, a small notebook with Joanna's notes about her daughter's development, and a sealed letter with the name "For Lily" written in her mother's delicate handwriting. "Can I read it?" Lily asked, holding the letter carefully. "Do you want me to read it for you?" Daniel offered, noticing that some words might be difficult for her. Lily thought for a moment, then shook her head. "I want to try by myself first." With the typical concentration of a determined child, Lily opened the letter and began to read aloud, pausing on the more difficult words. "My dearest Lily, if you are reading this, it means you have grown up and learned to read even better than I taught you. I am writing this letter because I want you to know that no matter what happens, you always were and always will be the greatest love of my life." Lily's voice trembled, and Daniel helped her continue. "I taught you to draw birds because they represent freedom and hope. When you feel sad or lonely, draw a bird and remember that Mommy's love flies to you wherever you are. Be brave, be kind, and never forget that you deserve to be happy." The silence that followed was heavy with emotion. Lily carefully folded the letter and held it against her chest. "Daddy Daniel," she said finally, "I think Mommy knew you were going to take care of me." "Why do you think that?" he asked, swallowing his tears. "Because she wrote about birds, and you let me draw birds every day, and because—" She paused, searching for the right words. "Because you make me feel safe, just like she did." Margaret, who had watched the whole scene, approached with a radiant smile. "Joanna would be so proud of you both," she said. "Lily, you found a family that loves you, and Mr. Valmont, you found a chance to honor the memory of a dear friend." Later that day, back at home, Daniel and Lily were in the garden when she asked a question that caught him by surprise. "Daddy, do you think Mommy is happy in heaven?" Daniel stopped watering the plants and looked up at the sky where a few white clouds floated slowly. "I think so, my daughter. I think she's very happy knowing you found a family that loves you. And do you think she likes you?" The question touched Daniel deeply. "I hope so. I'm trying to be the daddy she would want me to be for you." Lily ran to him and hugged him tightly. "She does. I can feel it." That night, as Daniel sang a lullaby he had finally learned correctly, Lily snuggled into her new bed, surrounded by stuffed animals and bird drawings. "Daddy," she said sleepily. "Yes, my daughter. Thank you for finding me." "Thank you for letting me find you," he replied, kissing her forehead. When Lily finally fell asleep, Daniel remained for a few minutes watching her sleep peacefully. For the first time in 5 years, since losing Marianne, he felt complete. He had found his purpose, not just in honoring Joanna's memory, but in discovering that he was still capable of loving and being loved. Outside, a bird landed on the windowsill of Lily's room, sang a sweet melody, and then flew towards the stars, as if carrying a message of gratitude to the sky. The story of suffering had come to an end. In its place, a new story began, a story of healing, love, and second chances, where a lonely businessman and an orphan girl discovered that sometimes the strongest families are those chosen by the heart, not by blood. And so, in the historic town of Ashworth, where stone streets hold the secrets of past generations, a new generation began to write its own story of hope, proving that even in the darkest moments, there is always a light waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to look for it. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story with a score from 0 to 10, and thank you so much.